Hamilton gets angry with his Ferrari engine after the Barcelona race. Stay until the end to see all the details of the brutal tension between Hamilton and the Ferrari team after the race. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. It happened under the blistering sun of the Catalan afternoon, with the grandstands drowning in scarlet passion, thousands of fans waving Ferrari flags as if summoning destiny itself, expecting magic from Lewis Hamilton in red. But what they got instead was a seismic unraveling. Not just a mechanical failure, not just a misstep in setup. This was the implosion of a relationship, the disintegration of trust, the eruption of a seven-time world champion caught in the unbearable contradiction of expectation and dysfunction. Hamilton, who had risked everything leaving Mercedes behind to etch his legacy in Maranello red, found himself trapped in a spiraling mechanical nightmare by the time lap 23 arrived. His voice came through the radio like a fuse igniting, loaded with restrained fury and disbelief, the kind that bubbles only after years of championship-level standards suddenly collide with reality's mediocrity. "Guys, I've got a clutch issue. Something's not right." There was urgency, but more than that, there was suppressed rage. "I'm losing power in and out of the corners. There's lag on throttle input. It's like half the engine is asleep." His race engineer, trying to keep the facade of protocol, threw out a list of instructions like a man clutching at falling glass. Switch to Strat 6, then 8, then 9. Nothing worked. Each setting a futile hope that something would change, that the hybrid system would kick in, that Ferrari's simulation tools weren't lying. "I've done it 3 times, Hamilton snapped back, his voice slicing through the static. Still no torque. Still nothing on exit. The clutch is slipping or it's just dead. And I'm pretty sure ERS isn't deploying." What had begun as a complaint became a diagnosis, and what was a diagnosis turned into a public reckoning. By lap 25, the data told a grim story. The MGUK wasn't engaging properly. In fact, it hadn't been doing so for 5 laps. Energy recovery was flatlining. The battery's charge cycles weren't rotating. The gearbox had begun to spit irregularities into the telemetry logs. Nothing dramatic enough to warrant an immediate retirement, but enough to make every upshift an unpredictable gamble. And then, as if the machine itself chose to make a statement, Hamilton launched out of turn 5 and let loose, his voice booming through the cockpit, cutting into the team radio like an axe. "This is ridiculous. What am I even driving right now? This thing is undrivable. The clutch is gone, the MGUK is dead, the battery isn't even rotating cycles, and now I've got delay in upshifts." Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Inside the Ferrari garage, panic metastasized. Vasseur stood motionless, eyes locked on the screen, lips pressed together so tightly it looked like he was holding in a scream. Engineers scrambled between stations, pointing at overlays, trying to reconcile what they were seeing with what they had expected. This wasn't supposed to happen, not with Lewis, not here, not now. The Spanish Grand Prix was supposed to be a redemption arc, a comeback narrative, the start of Ferrari's climb back into the championship fight. Instead, it was becoming a slow-motion disaster. And in the middle of it all, the intra-team drama flared with a casual comment from the other side of the garage. Charles Leclerc, comfortable in P3 and surrounded by relative silence on his end, had been monitoring the chatter. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was just honesty. But it came across the radio like gasoline to a fire. "Is Lewis having issues again? I told you we shouldn't have compromised the cooling strategy this weekend." A throwaway remark in any other context, but in this one, a battlefield already scorched by friction and whispered resentment, it landed like a missile. That comment, unsurprisingly, found its way to Hamilton after the race. And what could have been a quiet internal debrief turned into a slow-burning fallout. There was no team photo after the race. No unified wall of smiles for the press. Just silence, followed by whispers, followed by internal emails that will never see daylight. Hamilton left the circuit not with anger, but with something worse, disillusionment. He had seen it before, the quiet dysfunction that tears down champions not with a bang, but with a whisper. The subtle signs that the dream sold to him in a Maranello boardroom was beginning to crack under the weight of politics, engineering errors, and old-school stubbornness disguised as passion. He didn't need to say it. His body language said everything. The rushed exit. The ignored journalists. The look exchanged with Vasseur, not of blame, but of exhausted disappointment. In the days that followed, nothing official came out. No statement from Ferrari. No quote from Leclerc. Just radio silence. But within the paddock, the story exploded. Engineers from rival teams began to murmur. Mercedes insiders, once Hamilton's family, started to gossip about potential exit clauses. Even Red Bull operatives, known for capitalizing on chaos, started watching the situation with predator-like patience. And amidst it all, Lewis kept silent, letting the storm swirl around him while planning his next move. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Because that's what champions do. They don't explode. They don't beg. They endure. And when the time comes, they make the world remember who they are. Hamilton, a man once known for controlling every emotional flicker under the helmet, could no longer contain the storm brewing inside him. Lap 30 became the breaking point. A blue and pink Alpine car slipped past him like it belonged at the front of the grid. The overtake was clean, efficient, and humiliating. In disbelief, he pressed the radio button, his voice cracking through static and frustration. "Are you watching this? Seriously, are you seeing this right now? I'm being overtaken by a midfield car like I'm parked. This isn't just about pace. This is about a complete failure in performance, in reliability, in direction. This would have never happened at Mercedes. I've raced in tough situations before, but I've never had this many breakdowns, errors, and technical missteps in one single race while I was with them. What are we even doing here? What's the plan? Because right now, it feels like we're improvising with a car built out of promises and prayers." The Ferrari pit wall froze, stunned. Mechanics glanced at one another, eyes wide behind their headsets. The tension in the garage was a thick metallic silence, broken only by the whirring of data streams and the tap-tap of keyboards. But then, Hamilton did something that turned the situation from tense to historical. He demanded direct contact, mid-race, with team principal Frederic Vasseur. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't normal. That was Hamilton unleashing years of pent-up frustration in the most public way possible. "Frederic, are you there?" he said, voice flat but heavy with restrained fury. "I want you to hear this from me directly. This engine, this whole package, isn't acceptable. We sat down in meetings. We discussed reliability. You promised upgrades. You promised direction. And now here we are. A power unit that doesn't shift properly. ERS problems every other stint. The hybrid system is all over the place. The throttle mapping feels like it was tuned by guesswork. I'm done waiting for next time. I'm done hearing we're working on it every weekend while I sink into midfield chaos." There was a brief pause. Static filled the channel. Then came Vasseur's voice, measured quiet, but unmistakably rattled. "Lewis, I understand. We are analyzing the data. Let's finish the race and then we'll debrief properly after. I hear your frustration." But Hamilton wasn't finished. He'd cracked open the dam and wasn't going to plug the flood. Not this time. "No, we debrief now," he shot back, leaving no room for negotiation. "I've had enough of this. I've watched my chances crumble race after race, ERS failures, deployment glitches, energy cycling errors, clutch inconsistencies, hybrid map misfires. And now even brake bias shifting mid-turn? Are you kidding me? That's a safety hazard, not just a performance issue. I'm in the car trying to fight, trying to build, trying to push this team forward, and every single weekend I get a new excuse in return. I'm not here to babysit problems. I didn't join Ferrari for speeches or slogans. I came to build a legacy. To win. But you can't win like this. You can't even compete like this." The team didn't respond. The radio line stayed open, but no voice came through. In the garage, screens flickered with real-time data, but no one dared make eye contact. The engineers sat frozen, knowing they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed 1,000 times in replays and headlines. The world had just heard Lewis Hamilton, not the polished media-trained champion, but the racer, the competitor, the man who once dominated F1 and now found himself helpless in a red machine built more on myth than modern strength. Commentators in the paddock were silent before erupting in disbelief. Fans watching at home began tweeting instantly, screenshots of the team radio surfacing within seconds. #Hamilton Meltdown trended worldwide in under 4 minutes. Analysts were already debating whether this was the beginning of the end for the partnership, or the spark needed to force internal revolution at Maranello. But what was undeniable, what no one could unhear, was the pure, unfiltered honesty of a man who had reached his limit. And in Formula One, limits usually signal one of two things: collapse or change. Hamilton didn't speak again for the rest of the race. He drove on, finishing the GP in silence, every corner and straight a reminder of a car that was never going to carry him to where he deserved to be. But the echoes of his words hung in the air long after the checkered flag fell, and in every garage across the paddock, people were whispering one thing: something just broke. After the checkered flag fell and the world turned its gaze elsewhere, Lewis Hamilton remained motionless in his cockpit, eyes fixed on a halo in front of him, his hand still gripping the wheel with a quiet fury that only he could truly understand. P11. No points. No redemption. No hope left in the tank. The sound of fans in the distance, the mechanics packing up, the engineers wrapping up debriefs, all of it blurred into a meaningless buzz as he sat there, refusing to exit, refusing to accept the reality that had just unfolded. The silence inside the car screamed louder than the engines ever could. When he finally climbed out, there was no one waiting with applause, no words of comfort, not even a glance from the Ferrari crew that once promised him a new era. The atmosphere was suffocating, laced with disappointment and unspoken blame. Mechanics avoided eye contact. Engineers buried themselves in screens. Vasseur stood with his arms crossed, trying to look composed, but his tension was undeniable. Hamilton's visor came up, revealing a face soaked in sweat and shadowed by frustration. He didn't say much, just one sentence, low and deliberate, eyes locked with Vasseur's. "Get me Toto." It wasn't a question. It was a demand born from betrayal, an emotional SOS sent not to a team principal, but to someone who had once built a kingdom around him. And astonishingly, that call was answered. Inside a heavily secured room, far from the chaos of media and fans, Lewis initiated a confidential call routed through encrypted channels, a procedure typically reserved for crises and classified data. On the other end, Toto Wolff picked up, his voice calm but tinged with immediate concern. The Mercedes war room had already reviewed the race in real time. He had seen everything: the lack of pace, the failed strategy, the mechanical glitches, the radio silence from Ferrari that spoke volumes. The conversation that followed wasn't strategic. It wasn't political. It was raw human, filled with weight that couldn't be captured in telemetry or debrief slides. "It never felt like this with you, Toto." "Never," Lewis said, eyes closed, voice steady but wounded. "In over 10 years with Mercedes, I had problems, sure, but I always had faith. There was always a solution, always a plan, always a future. But here, I'm just watching my career fall apart from the inside of a car that doesn't even know who I am." There was a pause, long and meaningful. Wolff didn't rush to answer. When he did, it was with quiet intensity. "I watched every lap, Lewis. Every single one. You didn't deserve that. You never did. You gave them your name, your legacy, your brand, and they gave you a shell of a machine. You're not just another number to us. You were the heartbeat." Lewis inhaled slowly, jaw tightening. "They promised innovation. All I've got is frustration. Every throttle press feels like a gamble. The car doesn't speak to me, it fights me. This isn't racing. This is survival." On the other side of the call, Toto's silence spoke volumes. But that wasn't the end of the night. Back in the paddock, long after the fans had dispersed and most of the teams had gone silent, Charles Leclerc attempted what some might have considered a gesture of sportsmanship. He approached Lewis near the motorhomes, calm and cautious. But Hamilton's body language was cold, arms folded, posture defensive. "What do you want, Charles?" he asked, eyes narrow, tone sharp. Leclerc hesitated, then said, "I just thought we could talk. I didn't mean for the radio to sound that way. I only said what I saw." Hamilton's eyes flared with disbelief. "You said I was struggling like I was some backmarker rookie. You undermined me when I was already being eaten alive by this car. You knew how bad the car was, and you still chose to highlight my failures in front of the world." Leclerc raised his hands in a defensive gesture, but his voice remained firm. "I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus. I was surprised. Shocked, even. That wasn't the Lewis I know. And that's not an insult, it's the truth." "The truth?" Lewis snapped, taking a step closer. "You don't know my truth. You see 30 laps and think you've got the full story? I've been dealing with this failure from day one. Every GP, I strap into a machine that doesn't belong to me, doesn't understand me. And instead of backing me up, you broadcast doubt to the world." Leclerc frowned, his own frustration rising. "I didn't sign up to be your cheerleader. I said what I saw. You think I enjoy watching you go through this? This team is broken for both of us." There was a moment, long, icy, volatile, where it felt like they might cross a line no PR department could recover from. But Hamilton simply turned away. "I don't need sympathy," he said. "I need a car that works." And with that, he walked off into the night, leaving Leclerc alone in the shadows of a garage that once dreamed of championship banners, now haunted by the sound of opportunity slipping away. Some say that encrypted call wasn't the end of the discussion between Hamilton and Wolff. Some believe contracts were pulled from digital vaults. That Mercedes, watching their former champion crumble in red, began asking themselves impossible questions. Questions that might reshape the grid. Not next year. Not in 5. But tomorrow. Because when a legend whispers, "Get me Toto," the world listens. Hamilton didn't even wait for the team principal to finish the sentence. His glare was ice. His words colder. There's a difference between honesty and opportunism. You knew what you were doing when you said that. If this team is going to move forward, we need unity, not backstabbing. The room froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Even the low hum of telemetry screens seemed louder than usual. The kind of silence that doesn't settle. It hangs in the air like tension before a storm. No one made eye contact. The debrief wasn't a debrief. It was a standoff. Engineers exchanged glances, but said nothing. The data didn't lie, but the problem wasn't just on the track. It was inside the walls of Ferrari, behind the doors, beneath the red banners that once symbolized glory but now cast long shadows. Outside the motorhome, the paddock buzzed. But inside, there was nothing but frost and unease. Hamilton had always known F1 was political. He didn't expect Maranello to feel like this. Like betrayal wrapped in silence. The mechanics didn't know where to stand, where to look, how to fix something that wasn't physical. Tools can't solve fractures in trust. PR teams whispered nervously in corners, strategizing on how to dodge the inevitable media barrage. Journalists were gathering like hawks, already dissecting body language, tone, posture, silence. And Hamilton, he walked straight out. No interviews. No statements. No smirks. Just the cold stare of a man whose dream had taken a punch to the chest. The moment he exited the paddock, phones lit up. DMs started flying. Whispers became roars in private telegram groups, encrypted threads, insider chats. Was this it? Was this the moment Ferrari cracked the soul of a 7-time world champion? Inside sources, reliable, nervous, always asking for anonymity, hinted at something much bigger. A meeting. Not official. Not on any calendar. But scheduled. Quiet. Somewhere in a Mercedes hospitality suite in Spielberg. A conversation, they say, not about the past, not about nostalgia, but about unfinished business. Some say Lewis never wanted to come back to Brackley. Others say he never stopped thinking about it. About the silver. About control. About engineering precision. About a place where performance talks louder than politics. He's not done. Not even close. Anyone who saw his eyes in the garage on Sunday knows the fire hasn't dimmed. If anything, it's raging. There's no sign of resignation, only restraint. Hamilton isn't walking away. He's calculating. And Barcelona wasn't just a DNF. It was a trigger. The moment that ripped off the veil. The car let him down, yes. But what broke was bigger. What shattered wasn't carbon fiber. It was trust, belief, the fragile hope that legacy could be manufactured in red. He wanted to build something immortal in Maranello. He spoke about Senna, about Schumacher, about being more than a driver. He wanted to become a chapter in Ferrari history, not just a headline. But this chaos, this erosion from within, it's something he can't battle alone. Not when the knives are this sharp. Not when the wounds are personal. The problem isn't just horsepower. It's hierarchy. It's decisions made behind frosted glass. It's whispers that travel faster than strategy updates. And Hamilton, for all his diplomacy, for all his media training, for all his maturity, knows when he's being positioned as the fall guy. He's seen this game before. He's played it. He's survived it. And he's ready to flip the board if he has to. The headlines will speculate. They'll guess. They'll write think pieces about legacy, failure, betrayal. But the truth? It's in motion already. Agents are talking. Lawyers are reviewing clauses. Engineers are sending encrypted messages. Every paddock insider knows, when Lewis Hamilton goes silent, something's coming. And it's not peace. Maybe it's a return. Maybe it's revenge. Maybe it's reinvention. But it won't be quiet. It won't be simple. It won't be predictable. Because Hamilton isn't done writing history. He's just deciding where the next chapter begins, and who deserves to be in it.